Well, how you all doing today? Gonna do another video here. Had some free time this morning and have the air conditioning running. Another muggy day today, kind of warm. So you'll have to kind of bear with the fan running a little bit in the background. One of the disadvantages to having your shop in the basement. But anyways, so a couple things I want to go over today. I've kind of been getting overwhelmed with comments and things, so I want to try to take some time to answer some of the questions that I've had over the last probably the last month or so. Haven't been getting back to you guys online because, you know, it's to sit down and read everything and type it, just don't always have the time. The other thing I wanted to show you is a couple of things. This one you've seen in videos, and I've had a lot of questions and comments even over, you know, the last month about it, so I'll give you a little insight on this. And I just wanted to show you real quick this little device that's been floating around out there on Banggood and eBay. It's a signal generator and frequency counter all in one, and they're very inexpensive. This thing doesn't weigh anything. It's got a switch mode power supply. It's hollow almost inside. I was just going to do a quick review on it, but the more I started digging into it, the more I started finding out about it, both good and bad things. And I know there's two camps of people out there that, you know, some people say don't waste your money on garbage, the cheap Chinese garbage. And if you're a serious radio engineer or into electronics, things like that, I agree with that. Don't waste your money on cheap stuff, because it's not going to really do you any good unless you have some specific need for it for some simple purpose. And you know, you have the money because it's cheap. Yeah, that's good. But on the other hand, if you're a beginner, depending on what it is you're trying to do, this might be an affordable way for you to get some test equipment that you otherwise may not be able to afford. I mean, even a good used piece of test equipment, especially like a good quality signal generator, can still be hundreds of dollars. And these can be had online for, you know, for $50 or even less, depending on what frequency range you buy this in, because there's 4 different models of this. From, I think the smallest one is like either a 2 or 6 megahertz, and the top of the line one, which is about $60 or $65, is somewhere in the line of the 25 megahertz or something. This is a 20 megahertz model that I have. But the more I started digging into it, especially with the included software, yes, this little teeny tiny disc will work in your CD or DVD player in your computer. There's quite a lot of functionality to this, but there's also some limitations that the limitation might be my lack of knowledge of the device yet, but I'm starting to think that maybe that's not the case. Again, I don't recommend this right now where I'm at with it. I wouldn't recommend it for working on radio, but for generating a signal up to 20 megahertz, just a pure sine wave, square wave, something like that, I think it'd be good for that. As a frequency counter, it seems to work fine. It's got dual outputs. You can certainly do what you see me do a lot. It has up to 20 volts peak to peak output, so it has a real strong output. So you can very easily go ahead and use this for like testing amplifiers. Like you see me do that a lot with my Rigel signal generator. This will make a nice sine wave, and it's pretty clean. So again, it just depends what you want to do, but I'm going to reserve doing a review on this until I really learn a little more about the software. I installed it on my computer. I was actually pretty impressed with what all you could do. So anyways, more about that later. Okay, sorry, I got a call there. But where was I? So we'll do a review on this later. Now when we go over to this, I've gotten a lot of comments and questions asking about this thing. And this is the little digital media player device that I use to play play music on my stereo. Now let me make Tony's disclaimer. Number one, you know I joke a lot about my bad ears, and I'm only half joking. You know, my ears don't work like they used to, and I'm not an audiophile. To me, an audiophile is somebody who makes a hobby out of studying and listening to sound and listening to audio. And people like that, you know, are very perceptive to a lot of different changes in audio to sounds. You know, they can hear little differences that most of us can't hear. Okay, to me, it's kind of a mixed blessing. I mean, I don't think I'd like knowing the difference between a $5 capacitor and a $10 coupling capacitor, because heck, you would always be plagued with it doesn't sound good enough. So I don't really want to have that good a hearing. But I'm only joking. Everybody has their hobby. I know a lot of people look at me and say, well, why in the heck do you want to play with wires and electronics? But to each his own. But that being said, I am a bit particular about my sound, and I'll be honest with you, I just really don't particularly like a digital sound. Let's put it this way, and again, this is total opinion. Everybody's going to have a completely different outlook on this, but here's the way I look at it. If you take a painting, you know, let's use an example everybody knows, the Mona Lisa, okay, by Leonardo da Vinci. It's a masterwork of art, and when you look at it in real person, you can see the actual brush strokes. You can see the paint on the canvas. But if you take a photograph of it, a digital photograph, okay, with your camera phone, that painting will never look the way that it will in real life, because when you digitize it, the painting can only look as clear as the smallest pixel that digital camera can resolve. So eventually you find out that picture is made up of a bunch of little colored dots. Okay, that's what a digital picture is. No matter how high resolution it is, it's still not the same as analog. In other words, you don't have the pure brush strokes that you're looking at. You're looking at a mosaic of little dots of color that represent those brush strokes. Now, if you stand from a distance, you really can't tell the difference. But if you look up close and you study it, there is a big difference between the digitized picture and the real picture. And if I take a picture of that painting with film, let's say, you know, the size of a particle of film emulsion is much, much smaller. So there's less distortion of that picture from the original. Now, of course, we have light and shutter speed and focus and all those kinds of things, perspective and everything. But that said, there's always going to be that digital component of something that was made in an analog world. And when I listen to digitally recorded music, just to me, it's just a little bit more harsh sounding to my ears. Now, I've heard very high quality digital music, and it's not bad, you know, but there's just something that I can't put my thumb on when I listen to, you know, a really good record, you know, on vinyl with a really good turntable and a really good stylus and a really good cartridge and a really good stereo system. It produces the sound, especially when that recording was an analog recording from the start. There's just something to that you, in my ears, my bad ears, you can't completely faithfully reproduce digitally. Now, again, there are extremes, and they have gotten very good at it, and at the really high end, digital recording can sound pretty close now. And actually there's some things about it that are better, because you can remove background noises that you normally would not hear gone, you know. But a good stereo, an analog system, you know, I've heard things like on a good vinyl, you can hear the pick of the guitarists making contact with the string just before the string makes the note. I mean, those are things you can't always hear when you dumb it down, you know. So anyways, that's kind of my take on it. So just to put my cell phone on MP3 and play it, you know, it sounds kind of harsh. So I was looking for some kind of a alternative, and that's what this little Zowie Audio T5 is all about. It's still not going to sound like vinyl, and it sure is a cheap device, but compared to your off-the-shelf MP3 player, this can play some of the lossless. Lossless means that when they digitized it, they used, you know, you're using up more data, but you're getting a more faithful reproduction of the original. Okay, so like a FLAC file, that's a acronym for, and I forget what it is, but L is for lossless. It's basically lossless audio, and WAV files, we're all familiar with those. When you start getting into MP3s and things, you're starting to compress the sound, and you're starting to, the first thing that starts to suffer the most is the high frequencies. My ears don't work well with high frequencies as it is because I'm older, and when you start listening to, you know, highly compressed music, it starts to sound kind of tinny and echoey in the back of my ear. I can't explain it, but it's just a sound that is unpleasant to me. So what I was looking for was a device that could play the higher quality digital recordings, but still would not be a, you know, a $3,000 piece of equipment. I mean, there are very high quality digital audio players out there, but the price on them is pretty ridiculous, and I just can't justify it because most of the recordings that you buy out there, and the ones that you don't buy, you know, like from the download centers, you know, like from the music library and everything, aren't that high quality digital anyways. So this was a compromise to me. It was in a price range that I liked, and it, you know, it has gold plated outputs on it. It has a digital output, both optical and you know, and non-optical coax, and you can switch between optical and coax outputs. It has a standard output. It has an input that you can pass audio through it. It comes with a little remote control, and I put Velcro on it just so I don't lose it, because I'm one of those guys that loses the remote. It plays off of your basic flash drive, and it's very awkward if you have a flash drive that has a lot of songs on it. If you don't know what number of song, you know, you can punch in the manual number of the song. If you don't know that, it's very slow scrolling through the music. So it's certainly not an ideal situation, but if you want to listen to as good a quality audio as you can with digital, without spending a ton of money, this is decent, and this is why I bought it. Now, here's some of the reasons that I purchased this one over some of the others out there. Number one, here's where I got it from. That Douk Mall, or Duke, however you say it, D-O-U-K Mall. They're very popular on eBay. They sell a lot of, you know, audio equipment. And you can see the price, you know, I just pulled this down, $40, and I believe 12 bucks for shipping. So expect to spend in the $50 to $55 range, you know. Whether it's free shipping, if it's free shipping, the price will be $50, and if it's, you know, $40, then you'll pay for shipping. It's just the way it works. But a couple of the features that I like about this are the fact that it plays a whole bunch of different, if you notice, it uses up to a 32 gig flash drive. It works off of a FAT32 format, but not NTFS. So, but, you know, that's not a problem. It plays all kinds of different audio formats, and especially the lossless versions. And the most important thing is that the chips that it's using inside there, let's see if I can find my things, Mr. Disorganized Tony, is it actually uses, so for the A to D converter, it uses this Texas Instruments, let me move the camera a little better angle for you, and it uses this Texas Instruments PCM 1802, which is a 24-bit 96 kilohertz A to D converter, which isn't too bad, okay? And if you look at some of the specs on this thing's really a pretty good performer. Okay, it has 64 up to 128 times oversampling. It's really not a bad device, you know, for what it costs. And there's also the Cirrus Logic 192 kilohertz, the interface transmitter. So the actual audio portion of this is 192 kilohertz capable, made by Cirrus Logic. Again, very good quality chip. And if you look inside, the build quality on this is fairly good. Let me see here. I took it apart and took a few pictures of it. And if you look here, there's the layout of it. It's actually got a very hefty power supply filter capacitor. It does have DC input, and and you can see they have all the right kind of filtering. That's what all this end is. And here's your audio processing chips are on there. But you can see it's a very neatly put together board. They did a very good job of it. Okay. You can see there's another perspective of it. So I did my homework on it, and now that I've gotten it, those recordings that you've heard, both on the ICO and on the ADCOM preamp video that I just did, were both, the source of the music was this. And some of those music library recordings on the YouTube Music Library are actually pretty good quality recordings. They're not bad. And since they haven't been hacked and ripped from a DVD, CD or something and then posted on the peer sites and all that, it's really not a knockoff song. It's their original recording. They post them up there. They're not too bad. And as you can hear, the thing I really like about this is there's no hiss. You know how like a lot of these cheap MP3 players will have hiss and crackle in the background, and they're just not clean. This is a very pure, clean sounding little device. So that's what it is. You kind of saw there where I got it and how much it was. A little rundown on how they're put together. Nice, strong, well-built aluminum case. That's a thick, solid piece of aluminum there, believe it or not. Yeah, really nice little device. So that answers that question. I know I've had a lot of comments about that, and I just haven't had time to do an actual review of it, but I think you heard my recordings. Basically, I use that Blue microphone. That's a USB microphone. I record using Audacity, which is a freeware recording software, and on purpose I try not to modify it at all. So I set my record level so that I'm just peaking out just below 0 dB, and I do the recording, I do the run as it is, and pretty much how it's recorded is the way I put it out there. I don't change the tone, I don't try to modify anything. So what you're hearing on those recordings is the way I recorded it. I didn't do anything to it afterwards. I just basically compress it into an MP3 so that I can upload it, integrate it into my video, and that's it. And I do the highest quality of recording I can get, that's available. So that's it. That's how that works and how I do all that. Okay? So let's look at a couple more questions, because that's really what I'm gonna spend the rest of this video doing. And I get, let's see. So one of the questions I had was, okay, what is the little box on top of the power amp? That's it. Now, so let's see, I'm looking through, there's so many of them here. Okay, number one, Tony, did you consider possibly using supercapacitors to replace power supply filter caps in the amp? Because I know you commented about the the capacitors. Well, let's talk about that. First of all, I've been listening to that sound Craftsman now for a couple of days, and the sound is very clean, very good. I mean, it's surprising. I really didn't. I expected it to perform more like a, like a public address or a PA system, or a, something that you would use for live performances. But surprisingly enough, it really holds its own. It's a very quiet amp. It's very, very flat sounding. But it has one fatal flaw, and that is when you have any big transients, any big peaks of like bass or a loud pop of music where the volume very rapidly changes from a low volume to high, that amplifier, because of those small 15,000 microfarad capacitors, has a very difficult time delivering that power. And even at moderately loud volume levels, but not ear shredding, I see the clip lights flash very intermittently. And they flash because what's happening is your capacitors, the amplifier is getting ahead of the capacitors. And because of that, you get the clip, because basically once you start losing that reserve of power in your main capacitors, you start to draw the current directly through the transformer, and transformers really don't like heavy current spikes like that. So really the right fix for that would be a modification to the power supply, and I think it would make that amp leaps and bounds better. Had they put that amp in a standard sized case and put a big hefty power supply and left everything else the same, that amp would be improved a noticeable amount. So I had another question, is the Adcom and the Sound Craftsman your best sounding system that you have? And I would have to say no. It's in my ears, it's not. For jazz and classical, I really liked it. I've listened to some things on that, and it sounds really good with those clip speakers. But it just has it's just missing some ingredient is missing when you're playing any kind of rock or any kind of more modern sounding music. It just doesn't perform. It's 205 watts per channel, and I know you heard my rant about power on this last video I did. It's really true. My 60 watt per channel SA 8500 Pioneer integrated amplifier absolutely can keep up with that 205 watt per channel Sound Craftsman volume wise. I defy you to hear it if you're standing here in front of my speakers and I play one and then the other and I max them both out. I defy you to hear any audible difference in the volume level. That it just goes to show the watts really don't mean a whole lot. The other thing is the Pioneer just has a sound that I really like. It fits my ears. You have to have the right shoes to fit your feet. When you buy a pair of shoes, the next guy could put those shoes on and they feel terrible on his feet. Amps are the same way, and I have to say the Pioneer fits my ears. I like Pioneers. I like the Marantz, the older Marantz, the 22 series, like the 2238, 2250, 2275, all those. I love the Sansuis, like the 8080s and the 9090s. My cousin has a 9090 DB that he modified and restored a long time ago. It's fantastic. I have another cousin that had the Pioneer Spec system, Spec 1 and Spec 2. Fantastic. All of those are my favorite, and they just have a sound to my ears that is really hard to beat. And to be dead honest with you, I'll probably go back to one of the Pioneers for me. Now, that said, my equally favorite for other reasons is a total ADCOM system. So that GTP 400 coupled up with an original ADCOM amplifier like a GFA 535, 545, 555. Those are another ones that just awesome. A GFA 555 amplifier is 200 watts per channel, okay, and it's every bit as it's just got a lot more punch than that sound Craftsman. Okay, so my main system upstairs is ADCOM. I have a GTP 400 for the preamp and a GFA 535 that I modified. It has the dual power supplies, but I changed the bridge rectifiers, I changed the capacitors, I put different output transistors, I recapped it, changed the bias a little bit, changed the did some mods to the resistors in the current limiting to change the damping a little bit. The amp is phenomenal, and for 60 watts per channel, it's all I'll ever need, and it's been up there for years, and I love it. Okay, let me look at a couple others, and I'll be right back. Oh, okay. So I got on a rant, and I never really answered the question about the supercapacitors. So again, I made that comment about the capacitors, and that's what caused it. But why wouldn't I use supercapacitors? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, a supercapacitor takes a long time to charge up, and for that period of time that it's charging, because of its capacity, it is drawing very, very exceptionally heavy current. That's a problem. The other problem is a practically designed supercapacitor isn't going to be more than a volt, volt and a half, less than 2 volts. So if I need to have 75 volts of capacitor in supercapacitors, I would basically have to stack 40 or 50 of those in series, which would kind of defeat the whole purpose of the big capacitance. So you could see how a capacitor bank of those would be massive. They would probably blow the main circuit breaker in your house, and I'm not exaggerating. Actually, if the soft start circuit didn't exist in my Pioneer SX1050, it would blow the breaker on the breaker panel when you turned it on because of the inrush current. Supercapacitor would be way worse. So it's just not a practical thing to do right now. That's pretty much why I don't deal with those. They have their purpose, but that's not the real purpose for them. Okay. So let's see what else. Let me take a look. Okay, so I got a question about somebody and I'm sorry I'm not giving you much to look at while I'm talking. So I'm getting a lot of questions about that. Hold on a second, see if I can get it on here. Couldn't quite get it, but too much of a pain to print it out. I'll just read it to you. This is a pretty long question, but basically it's somebody who says that they don't know anything about electronics. They kind of want to start playing with it, and they want to put one of those little Bluetooth receivers into an old All-American 5 tube radio or some of the old transistor type radios. And I would recommend against that. All-American 5s are what's called hot chassis radios. They're very dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have the correct test equipment, and you don't understand the correct safety practices, you could severely get shocked or injured or even killed. Those are not very good. You're dealing with a high voltage device, which is a vacuum tube, and you're trying to couple a low voltage device, namely an MP3 player or a Bluetooth adapter or something. You have to use capacitive coupling, or you have to decouple that high voltage from the delicate device. The design that goes into that is a little bit beyond somebody who hasn't learned electronics yet. I would highly recommend watching a lot of videos and buying some little kits and things to get, and looking at maybe some books and materials out there on basic electronics before you really started changing and modifying things. Then I would start with small devices, you know, little transistor radios and things, or little amplifiers, little stereos, whatever, and start and do some repair work with them. You know, I'll show you an example here. So here's a little flea market rescue radio that I purchased, and this is a All-American 5. Not a beginner radio because of the high voltage and the hot chassis, but this would be a real basic thing that you could buy very cheap when you get to that level that you can work on. Now, some of the other things you can do is, if you remember, I did the little video on these little cheap radio kits that you can buy, and they're horrible, but they're really good at learning how to do kit building, just for basic soldering practices and things like that. The other thing you can do is buy some vintage little transistor radios, kind of like this one. It's a little Panasonic. Now these are kind of expensive because they're more collectible, but you know, you can take them apart and kind of tinker with them. There are ones out there that you'll find in flea markets and things that can be bought very inexpensively. You can buy little stereos, little amplifiers out there and work on them. And I would much recommend doing that than trying to work on modifying something like that. Now down the road, once you understand how it all works, you know, modifying a radio like this to be able to play your MP3, that'd be really cool. That would be neat, having something retro like this, you know, sitting in your living room or something on a counter, a real nice one with a wooden case or something, and to be able to play your modern devices through it so you can actually listen to, you know, modern music through them. A lot of these actually had really nice sound for being cheap little All-American 5s. They usually had pretty good little speakers in them. They have a vacuum tube amplifier, and they're capable of making nice sound, you know, that nice retro tube sound that we like. So that would be a good one right there. All right, the next comment deals with kind of a disagreement on terms when we talk about RMS power, or root mean squared, and how saying the word RMS power is actually incorrect. And technically, I've kind of pulled up everybody's go-to Wikipedia, but basically what this person is saying is correct, and that is, when we say RMS power, we're not using a correct terminology, in that that's not truly what we're measuring. RMS, okay, when we talk about voltage, let's say, if you take an RMS value of a sine wave, a voltage, okay, it's going to be an equivalent of it was basically going to give us a DC equivalent, okay, of that AC signal. What that means is, if I take a resistor, let's say we take a resistor and we place a sine wave across that, you know, like an AC signal across that resistor, and we measure the amount of heat that is converted from energy, you know, from electrical energy into heat energy, and we measure that value. Then we take a DC power supply and we slowly bring that DC level up until it produces the same amount of heat that that AC signal did, okay? That DC level would be equal to the RMS of, or the root mean squared of, that sine wave. They both would produce the same amount of heat in that resistor, okay? And so what we're trying to do when we're looking at average power on a, you know, on an output of an amplifier is, you know, AC, you know, music going into a speaker is moving all the time. That voltage is changing continuously, okay? Even when we use test equipment, we're putting a sine wave. That sine wave is continuously changing. So we really don't, we want to know on average what's the average power going into that, you know, being absorbed by your speaker. And so you would take the RMS of that voltage. Okay, so if you notice, whenever I do this, the first thing I do is I measure that AC sine wave coming across my speaker load, you know, my 8 ohm dummy load. I always measure that with an RMS AC voltmeter. So the volts that I'm reading is not peak voltage or not peak to peak voltage, it is average RMS. Okay, and that's what a true RMS voltmeter is. A true RMS meter can give you that average value of the, you know, of the AC signal regardless of the frequency to a certain point. So when we say RMS power, that's kind of some sloppy language on our part as electrical engineers, but what we're really saying is we're telling you what the average power is by taking the RMS value of that AC signal and then plugging it into Ohm's law with the dummy load using the 8 ohm resistor. And if we take that voltage squared divided by that 8 ohm resistor, that gives you the average power, or the DC equivalent of power being absorbed by that resistor. I hope that makes it a little clearer, okay? You will hear people, and I am guilty as charged, you will hear people like myself say RMS power. Well, it's really not. It's RMS voltage calculating the power. It would be a more accurate description, because if you took the peak voltage and calculated the actual power, and then you took the average, the RMS of the watts, it would be a way different number than when you're calculating the RMS voltage. And I'm not going to get into all the math of that right now, but suffice it to say that I am not telling you the truth, okay? Neither is anybody else when we say RMS power, but it's an implied thing. People who have been doing this for a long time, RMS power is kind of like an amalgamation of two thoughts at the same time. I'm using the RMS voltage to calculate this power. That's what RMS power means to us, but it's incorrect. And I want to focus right here. Let's see here. Right here where it says, but that is incorrect. Okay. Let's see here. Right here. As RMS power or watts RMS, but this is incorrect. It is not the RMS value of the power waveform, which would be a larger but meaningless number. Okay? So please don't get confused, and I apologize if I've misled anybody. Again, a lot of people that work with electronics, when you say the word RMS watts or RMS power, you already assume, you know, the mistake that we're making. You know what we're talking about. But if you try to look this up in electronics manuals, you will be misled and you will miscalculate what it is that we're reading. Your readings will be different than ours. So I hope that clears that up. That's a great comment, and I'm so glad that people brought it up, and people will debate that. But in the strictest of technical terms, you know, RMS watts or RMS power is not what we're really calculating, okay? We're calculating the average power based on the RMS voltage that is being presented across that load, okay? That sums it up. So I think I've chewed on your ears long enough. That I hope that caught me up with most of the questions. You know what? Now that I think of it, I think there is one more. Let me just look it up. Hold on. Okay, last but not least, I had a question. It was a dual question. I answered the first part already. Is you know, does that Craftsman sound better than all my other amps? And I think I addressed that already. But the other was, what kind of RCA jacks did I upgrade to? And these are it right here. And, you know, they're just generic eBay, gold-plated RCA jacks. And if you look at them, they're just, you know, they have two nuts, you know, a locking nut and a mounting nut. And they have these little plastic isolators, and you can see they have a little groove on the plastic that allows them, you actually drill the hole a little bit bigger than this metal center post, and then this plastic actually makes a little sandwich like that, and then isolates. If you want to use isolated terminals, then these don't touch the chassis. Now on that Craftsman, that doesn't matter because the chassis is grounded to the same common ground that everything else in the chassis is. But some people like to use what's called a star grounding system, where the ground all goes to one central location so that you have absolutely no chance of a ground loop, which can cause hum and noise in some situations. That's not an issue on the Craftsman. But these are nice because they serve a dual purpose. I can mount them direct if I don't worry about the chassis isolation, or I can use these little isolating rings to isolate them from the chassis. And I don't really know offhand where I got them. It was an eBay seller. I think these were only a couple of dollars, a pair. And I ordered, 10 or 15 pairs or something like that. At a decent price, and I think it was either free shipping or very cheap shipping, and this is how they come, and that's where I got them. Okay, things like that, terminals and stuff like that, a lot of those I will buy online, like China type things, from eBay. They're not, those are actually pretty good quality. I've bought other ones from eBay that were garbage. As soon as you try to tighten them, they strip out. You have to buyer beware. What I would recommend is, if you're going to try the cheap ones, buy one pair. If they're garbage, you're only out $1 or $2, and don't order them again. If they're really good quality, then stock up on them, order some. But that's the best way to do it. You can order them. There are some more reputable stores that sell good quality ones, but you can very easily, especially if you get into the rhodium terminals or the actual solid gold plated ones that aren't just like electroplated a little bit like those ones, you can get a lot of money into those. And a lot of the projects I work on, if it's not a multi-$1,000 piece of audio gear, I'm probably not going to put that kind of money, because you're probably not going to notice the difference anyways on that type of gear. So that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. This is a way too long video already for what it started out as. I hope it answered some of your questions, and this was not a very good video for people who are looking to learn or something, but hopefully it'll clean up some of the questions that I've had out there and help you all out. Sorry for making you stare at the same picture all video. Hopefully we'll have a little more exciting ones to come here pretty soon. So stay tuned, and thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate all your good comments. Keep them coming. And last but not least, I will share with you, a lot of people are asking what my email is, if they wanted to email me about repairing a device or something, and it's and there's my email. If you want to send me an email, this one is not directly connected to any of my email monitoring programs or anything. I just check it periodically as I have time to get to it. Sometimes I can get back to you really fast, sometimes it's a little delay, but if you email me, I will get back to you. As long as it's a reasonable email, no spam, nothing like that. I really don't want comments on there. That's strictly for if you have some questions or inquiries about wanting me to look at one of your amps or something. I will look at things and do some repairs case by case basis. Let me post this back up while I talk. I will do case by case basis, but again, it depends on my availability. I do have a family. I have a wife, and so forth, and dealing with some health issues a little bit in the family, and have 3 kids. They're older, but they're still in high school. And I own my own business, and that it's very, very busy right now. So sometimes I can get back to you right away, and sometimes there's a delay. As long as you understand that, and if you would like to email me, then there you go. So other than that, you guys have a wonderful day. I wish you all the best, and I appreciate all your comments. It's really like having a little family out there, hearing everybody talking and so forth about the same things that you like. It's really cool to talk to people about things that you like. So I appreciate you. I hope you appreciate me. I try to do some good out there, and you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next video.